Surely parents know that they can't just keep their kids in front of screens and expect them to be healthy. The problem isn't the knowledge, surely. The problem is perhaps they can't afford to or don't have the time to get their children in exercise.
Yeah, you're completely right. I think it's a very easy way to parent, isn't it, in terms of putting the kids in front of the screen and just hoping for hours and hours they'll be entertained, which a lot of the time they will be, playing video games, watching movies. However, this doesn't coincide with what we need to be nurturing kids with. If you think about what they're going to be seeing when they're actually in school in term time, they'll be having PE classes, be having break time and lunchtime where they get to run around and play games with their friends. And they don't get this at home. That's why the NHS government campaign of having, 10 minutes of exercise a day inspired by like Disney games is really, really beneficial because it's really, really easy, it's cheap, it's free, and parents can access it and then play these games with their kids, or the kids can play games together. I'm talking about siblings, kids meeting up. Obviously, we're not in lockdown now, so houses can meet up, kids around the street, around the corner, because I know exactly how it was. I mean, it wasn't that long ago when I was a child in primary, secondary school, and I remember what it was like in terms of school holidays and trying to get active. And it was a lot more difficult than it was during term time when you can actually have dedicated time to work out. But there's so many different factors that kids need when it comes to exercise during the day. And there's so many developmental skills that these kids need to take on, such as, social skills and for their mental and physical benefits. So it's really important that parents are still making sure that their kids get some sort of exercise daily.
It's so interesting to me to hear you say about the fact that it's harder to get exercise in the school holidays, because I remember when I was at school, I would be told to go out and play in the morning and maybe come back when you're hungry, which might be about 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And during that time, you'd run around in the park, you'd get your roller boots on, you'd go to someone else's house, you'd play on the pavements. The world has not got that much more dangerous. Yes, we've got cars, and I think that's a big concern for parents. Yeah. But haven't we got to get braver, Emeka? Haven't we got to, as parents, not be so worried all the time? It's a bit like my monologue earlier about everything's about being afraid, being scared, stay at home, there's danger everywhere. Haven't we got to empower our children to go out and learn, just play out?
It's not as easy as it sounds, especially when you look at the statistics and you see that, like you mentioned, a lot of the kids of Black and Asian backgrounds aren't getting enough exercise. These are inner city kids who live in very crowded, very urban backgrounds, and you don't want your kids running out into the street when you know it's very crowded, you know it could be very dangerous, you don't really know who's about.
What do you mean? What do you mean? What do you mean? There's not more paedophiles now than there ever were. There's not more child abductions. There is less, if anything.
I didn't mention that, but there's so many other different dangers. You mentioned child abduction as one, but then obviously traffic as another, and then you mentioned other kids as another. And a lot of the time, parents want to know who their kids are spending time with. When you're in these crowded urban areas and you tell your kids just to run outside, especially because in these areas, a lot of people don't have quick access to parks and a bunch of the places where kids can play, and they can't actually look over their kids.
Well, you know what's dangerous?
More the rural areas, you know exactly where your children are. You know they're in the street.
I disagree.
You have that kind of community feel. That's not the case in these urban areas. They don't have that kind of community feel.
I'm not saying that. I live in London. I'm not saying this is an urban versus rural thing. In some ways, I think you might be safer in an urban environment. In a rural environment, you've got more open waters, which drowning kills more children than anything else in this country pretty much every year. But you know what's also dangerous? Being fat and having diabetes, that's dangerous. That's what's going to kill our kids in the future if this is only about fitness. I'm sure we agree on that one, Doctor.
100%. We do have an obesity problem, especially in children here in the UK, which I think we've addressed, and we've tried a number of different things with sugar tax and whatnot, and trying to encourage children with healthy meals in schools and cooking. However, I think exercise is definitely a big part of it, especially definitely a modifiable risk factor that we ourselves can manage and parents themselves can manage. It just takes a little bit more effort. Because I do understand from a parent's perspective, you don't want to just throw your kids into the street and not know who they're with and where they're going, because there are dangers out there. And I would have anxiety as a parent doing that. However, I think it's important for parents, even if they want to watch over their kids for an hour, or take the 3 kids out to the park for an hour just to run around by themselves and then bring them back in, or have them playing run around games inside if you have those kind of facilities. But a lot of the people in the urban areas obviously don't live in flats and smaller accommodations. But it's one of these things where it's going to take effort. It's going to take effort from parents and guardians. and older children perhaps supervising their younger siblings. But it's definitely something that's necessary. Like I mentioned in my book, Your Health in Your Hands, there are a number of different modifiable things that we as people, not just children, but as adults can do for our own health. And this is basically just one of them.